Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and I'm so glad that you are tuning in again to continue our reading of Dancing the Dream. Now, before I get any further, I want to address two things. Number one, I am fighting a bit of a cold. It's been trying to get the best of me for several days now, and I have not let it. But when I was doing my sound check, I thought I sounded a little congested. So hopefully it's not a problem, but I apologize if it ruins the listening experience. It's certainly not my aim. But secondly, and possibly related, I guess, I was not actually intending to record a podcast today, but I actually just spent some time writing, and I was finishing a poem that I started working on a couple of months ago. In the fall of 2024, I took a trip to California, and as a part of that trip, I ventured to Santa Ynez, California, which is where Michael Jackson's Neverland home is located. And I visited the property, and it was incredibly meaningful. It had a very profound and intense impact on me. I can't really even put it into words in any kind of a succinct way, but I have written about it a little bit and would be happy to, maybe share that in some form if people are interested. But needless to say, I while I was there, I took a million notes in a notebook. I also gathered leaves and flowers and things to dry that I could take with me home, I still have, and I have a little jar of dirt sitting on my desk right now. I'm not crazy, I promise. Anyway, I had these little scraps of language and lines laying around for a while, and I just wrote and finished the poem. I mean, it's the first draft. I may go and edit it, but I feel really happy with it right now. And I'm really excited because it's all stemming from real feelings that I had while I was there. And frankly, while I was writing it, I was extremely overwhelmed with emotion. I started crying at one point. I felt like I was almost channeling the feeling that I felt when I was there. It was a really profound kind of experience, and I guess it just made me think, perhaps I should record an episode today. Why not? So I'm very excited actually to record after having written that. I'm feeling, I guess, especially kind of sentimental and very interested in seeing how that could lend to a potential discussion. So no pressure on me or anything. But in all seriousness, I just felt kind of like I'm in this kind of loving space emotionally. And I thought, well, why not take the time to read and record and talk about Michael a little bit and talk about his work a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. So to continue on with our reading of Dancing the Dream, we have another short essay or reflection. And I have to say, I'm really touched that this is the one that is next, because this is one of my favorite pieces. And I'll talk a little bit about why when we get to the discussion portion. But this piece is close to my heart, and I want to share it with you. So this essay is called Enough for Today. Enough for today. Dance rehearsals can go on past midnight, but this time I stopped at 10. I hope you don't mind, I said, looking up into space, but that's enough for today. A voice from the control room spoke. You okay? A little tired, I guess, I said. I slipped on a windbreaker and headed down the hall. Running footsteps came up behind me. I was pretty sure who they belonged to. "I know you too well," she said, catching up with me. "What's really wrong?" I hesitated. "Well, I don't know how this sounds, but I saw a picture today in the papers. A dolphin had drowned in a fishing net. From the way its body was tangled in the lines, you could read so much agony. Its eyes were vacant, yet there was still that smile. The one dolphins never lose, even when they die." My voice trailed off. She put her hand lightly in mine. I know. "No, you don't know all of it yet. It's not just that I felt sad, or had to face the fact that an innocent creature had died. Dolphins love to dance. Of all of the creatures in the sea, that's their mark. Asking nothing from us, they cavort in the waves while we marvel. They race ahead of ships, not to get there first, but to tell us it's all meant to be play. Keep to your course, but dance while you do it." So there I was in the middle of rehearsal, and I thought, they're killing a dance. And then it seemed only right to stop. I can't keep the dance from being killed, but at least I can pause in memory, as one dancer to another. Does that make any sense? Her eyes were tender. "Sure, in its way. Probably we'll wait for years before everyone agrees on how to solve this thing. So many interests are involved, but it's too frustrating waiting for improvements tomorrow. Your heart wanted to have its say now." "Yes," I said, pushing the door open for her. "I just had this feeling, and that's enough for today." Okay, I'm going to be honest. That was kind of difficult for me to read, and it's kind of difficult for me to discuss now. I feel very emotional about this piece for many reasons. The first reason I will share is the reason I mentioned earlier. I love this piece. When I was in college, I remember reading a newspaper and seeing in that newspaper a story about this tradition of dancing bears. I believe it was Bulgaria, maybe. It was this photo of a bear that had just been released. It was the last dancing bear. And this was a practice where bears were held captive and in chains and were forced to walk on hot coals. Because it hurt them, they would move around trying to step away from the pain, and it gave the illusion that they were dancing. And it was a form of entertainment. And the story in the newspaper was that the last dancing bear had been released. And I was so overtaken with emotion about this story that I cut it out of the paper and I hung it on my fridge in my first apartment that I had when I was 19 or 20. And I looked at it every day, and it made me cry almost every day because of the sickness of it, but also the beauty of this bear now being free after a lifetime of torment, after the lineage of all these bears that had come before it that had been in so much pain. And I was so distraught by it, but I also felt weirdly unseen because I would tell people about it and I didn't feel anyone understood how I was feeling. And I've felt that way a lot in my life, as I'm sure many of you have, where you feel so much about something and no one else seems to really get it. And I swear, I'm not sure I ever felt seen in that aspect of myself until I read this piece by Michael Jackson. And I realized that this is exactly how I am. And he's exactly the same. We're the same. And it almost felt like a revelation to me that someone so famous and talented and brilliant and, all these things was also such a deeply sensitive, loving person who cared so much about the creatures of the world who are the victims of humanity. And I don't know, I just felt like I wasn't alone when I read it because I identified so much with it. So, needless to say, reading this piece the first time and now reading it again, it's very emotional to me. Not just because of the content of the piece, which I will absolutely talk about in a moment, but the fact that it was one of the first moments of my fandom where I felt a sense of kinship, not only with Michael, but it was one of the first moments of my life, or one of the more meaningful moments of my life where I felt really seen as a human being. And that's just really meaningful to me. So I'm sorry, I am getting emotional about it. Needless to say, this is one of my favorite pieces, not only because of that, but because of the actual piece itself. I love everything about this piece. When Michael is in dance rehearsal and he looks up and says, "I hope you don't mind, but that's enough for today." He's looking up, not into the control room, but up into space. And he specifies that. And that's so interesting. The way there's this constant kind of connection with a higher power or a source energy for him. He's letting, God or whoever, know, hey, I'm sorry, but I can't do more of this. And it's consistent with the stuff that Michael has talked about with being, seeing his talents and his abilities as gifts from God. And, I've heard many people say that he would, during recording sessions or rehearsals, sometimes they would catch him praying and thanking God for his gifts and, just showing his gratitude all the time and kind of living in that constant gratitude space. I just think about this moment with him, which this is one of those stories. I know I've said this about several others. Well, where, we can't quite know if this really happened. Did Michael really run down the beach to the moon to dance, or was that a metaphor? This one, I feel very confident this is real. I feel very confident this is real and actually happened. And I don't know, but I get that impression for certain. And because of that, I feel like this is a story that is just one of many moments where maybe Michael came across to others as, very gentle and sensitive, and people weren't really sure what was going on with him, if he was okay. But inside, this is what he was thinking about. He was thinking about a dolphin that had been drowned. He was thinking about the dolphin's dance. He was thinking about the playfulness of life being extinguished by harm. It's just like, it blows my mind a little bit, but it's also, like I said, really reaffirming. But then it continues, right, where Michael leaves. I love just imagining him putting on a little windbreaker and walking out of the room. This is just me being very, fangirlish, but I just think it's cute. But him walking down the hallway and then someone chasing after him. It's an unnamed person. I could theoretically guess of the many figures in Michael's life that were around often who it might be, but we don't know, and it doesn't really matter. If it mattered, he would have named her. But he tries to explain it. And at first, it seems like it's mostly about the sadness of the animal being harmed, of the actual individual animal being harmed. The dolphin drowning, the sadness and sickness of what led to it. But then when the woman implies that she gets it, he's like, no, it's deeper than this. It's not yeah, I'm sad about this. I love that he says this. Yeah, I'm sad, but And here's more. And this is another layer that really kind of gets to me. The way he describes the dolphin. He says, dolphins love to dance. Of all creatures in the sea, that's their mark. Asking nothing from us. They cavort in the waves while we marvel. They race ahead of ships to tell us it's all meant to be play. Keep to your course, but dance while you do it. This gets to me. And maybe this is obvious as to why. But this gets to me. Because, yeah, Michael was writing about the dolphins. And he was writing about the symbol they give us in life. And we can look all around us at nature for explanations of how we can and should live, of ways to be free. We can observe animals in their natural environment, in their interactions, in the way they don't bother each other unless they have to, the way they don't look out to cause harm, the way they seem to enjoy life while surviving, all these different things. But what gets to me is that this is also how I would describe Michael. I would describe Michael as someone, and I think he might describe himself this way, someone who is just trying to dance. Someone who is just trying to make life better, to make the world better, to present some kind of alternative way of being and existing, who is trying to show a different way to access yourself. He had said I think I've referenced it in a previous episode, the Ebony Jet interview from 1987, one of my favorite interviews. He referenced how he just wants to bring some peace to people's lives. I know there was an interview he did later in his career, I think in the late 90s maybe, where he did a radio interview with Steve Harvey, of all people. And he was talking about how he just wants to, he's not trying to hurt anybody. He's not trying to do anything wrong. He's just trying to make good music and entertain people and bring happiness to the world. And obviously, I think it's clear he was trying to do more than that. Wrote music that's stunning and things to get people to care and respond to the problems of the world. He didn't just write for this, quote unquote entertainment, but he did try to bring joy and happiness to people's lives and magic to people's lives. He tried to thrill people, and he did. But what kills me is he was also victimized in that process. He was torn down by the world. He was caught in the net, so to speak, of media disinformation, misinformation and disinformation. There is a difference. One is unintentional, one is intentional. I think Michael was the victim of both. Obviously, he was a victim of much worse things as well, but he endured so much, and in the end, he did not live the length of a life that I think he otherwise could have. I'm not going to get further into that. It's something I think a lot of major fans who have really studied Michael's life and his legacy will relate to, is this feeling that, well, he was just this kind, very pure person, purer than many people can understand, which was part of the problem. But this person who was really trying to impart a certain kind of joy in the world and brighten the world, and he was extinguished. And it's hard to not see the parallel there with this dolphin that he felt so strongly for. And it just breaks my heart, because some part of me does wonder when I read this, did he identify with the dolphin? And that's part of the pain it caused him. Did he see himself in that symbol and in that image? If he did, how aware of it was he when he wrote this? If he didn't, well, I wonder about that too, How easy was it for him to see really what he was and what he was doing for the world, and what was being done to him? I don't know all the answers to those things, of course. I think about this and the symbol of the dolphin and the fact that the description reads beat for beat to me like a description of Michael himself. And that is painful. I also was thinking about how I really love listening to interviews. I listen to the MJ cast quite a lot. I think I've listened to every interview episode they've done, but different interviews about different aspects of his life. And I think about this one episode. I hope I'm correct in how I'm citing it, but this one episode, the MJ cast did an interview with, I think, Violet Booker, I think is her name. Violet Booker, I believe she was the head of security at Neverland when Michael was there. And I believe they did this great interview with her, which I really enjoyed about, it's wonderful if you ever want to understand the Neverland thing, what he was doing there and what he was trying to accomplish, his mission with creating Neverland and all of that. I think one of the greatest ways is to listen to interviews with people who worked at Neverland. But anyway, this interview with her, you really get an insight into what they were really doing there and how they were it was like really a philanthropic and humanitarian effort. Nevertheless, within this interview with Violet Booker, I think this is the one where she tells a story about how there was a squirrel that was hit by a car somewhere, I think by a work truck somewhere on the Neverland property. And somehow Michael found out about it. I don't know if he saw the little squirrel's body or whatever, but she said that he called a meeting with the staff and was very clear with everyone, like, this cannot happen again. Like, you cannot, you have to be careful. Like, the wildlife belongs here and we have to take care to never let anything like this happen again. And it was very, very serious to him. From what I recall, he called the entire staff and was very intentional and serious. And when I heard that, I just was like, oh my God, because I love this man so much. It touched my heart so much. And I think she said that stuff did happen in the future and they would just kind of try not to tell him because, accidents happened and it was inevitable. But just the fact that he cared so much and made an effort to that, it touches my heart so much. And again, consistent. I always talk about that with him. There's so many consistencies with who he was. Either way, I've gotten off track a few times in this episode. I apologize for that, but Enough for Today is one of these pieces that for me offers so much. I mean, like I said, it offers insight into his relationship with God or a creator of some kind where he sourced his creativity. It offers insight into his compassion for animals and the greater world. It offers insight into, it's my read, but perhaps his own relationship to the world as a performer and as a person who really had pure intentions and was unfairly targeted in a lot of disgusting ways. It offers insight into his relationships to those people he worked with and around him. It offers insight into his view of life as being meant to include play and joy and freedom and happiness. There's just so much in this very short little piece. And I'm so glad that this is the one I read today. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I did cry, but that's okay because that's part of the experience, right? So I'm going to leave the crying in, and I'm going to let it live here in the recording because why not? Why not? So that is enough for today. I'm so sorry. That is enough for today, though. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and getting to sit with me in discussion of this piece and also discussion of Michael, because this certainly included a lot of discussion of Michael himself today. I want to thank you all once again for tuning in and listening, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. Take care.